Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Kendra Wise. I'm a member of the Worship Ministry, and I'm delighted to be here this morning with all of you. So this morning we have a special treat, what has become more or less an annual treat, a quote-unquote chat with the minister facilitated by Al Ronyecz. Al will ask Reverend Jonathan Young questions, and Reverend Jonathan will answer them. I think that's a basic premise. We'll see how it goes. I have a lot of faith in Al's ability to not let stuff slide, so we'll see how it goes. Al, thank you for being our interviewer extraordinaire this morning. Really looking forward to it. In this liberal religious community, we welcome all. Our generations join together to nurture our spiritual growth and personal transformation, that we may be inspired to transform the world with love, hope, compassion, and justice. We here at Live Oak and in many of our homes, places of school, and work are located on the traditional lands of the Chumash people. We pay respect to the Chumash people, the history and culture of the community, and all Native Americans as Americans' first peoples. We acknowledge and appreciate the Chumash people who are alive today, as well as the generations to come, as we continue to help steward this land which we love.
Welcome to this house of memory and celebration. For our opening words, from actually attributed to Kalidasa, look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty, for yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision, but today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Morning Poem by Mary Oliver. Every morning, the world is created. Under the orange sticks of the sun, the heaped ashes of the night turn into leaves again and fasten themselves to the high branches. And the ponds appear like black cloth on which are painted islands of summer lilies. If it is your nature to be happy, you will swim along the soft trails for hours, your imagination alighting everywhere. And if your spirit carries within it the thorn that is heavier than lead, if it is all you can do to keep on trudging, there is still somewhere deep within you a beast shouting that the earth is exactly what it wanted. Each pond with its blazing lilies is a prayer heard and answered lavishly. Every morning, whether or not you have dared to be happy, whether or not you have dared to pray.
This is a questionable idea. I look forward to it. It's summertime, time to be grilled. And all right, enough of that. I'd like to introduce Anderson Cooper. Al Ronyecz is our annual interrogator. We shall see what comes. Take it away, Al.
Here's Johnny. I couldn't pass it up. I'm sorry. Thank you all for participating. We have about 15 or so questions from 7 of the congregants, thanks to those who participated. And so we will try to get to all of them. So here is question number 1. Jonathan, what animal or mythical figure do do you think best represents the spirit of live oak?
I did get to look at the questions. I thought, okay, we're in trouble already. And what came to mind, and I do trust the sort of first impulse, that sort of intuitive flash, was the Lion of Venice. And I have no idea. I remember being a tourist and looking at it, glorious mythical creature, a very big, stately Chinese lion with wings. This thing, mythological creatures are creatures that cannot be. A lion doesn't have, a lion's a big, wonderful cat, big, strong, heavy cat, can't fly. In some ways, we shouldn't be able to pull this off, and yet we fly.
Why don't you present sermons based on stories from the Bible, Torah, Quran, or other religious works?
Nobody's ever mentioned it, ever. So I never got the feeling there was a huge demand. I have done 3 so far. One was on Jonah, and that's a great story. I read it psychologically as going down into depression and somehow resurrecting. Did one at Christmas time on the nativity story from the point of view of Mary, and then did one in the spring of last year on Pentecost and the arrival of the Spirit. So those are little bits and pieces. I've got more. There are some great stories out there. Did one service on Rumi, which wasn't the Quran, but it was Islamic, so we got some of that in there. But there's a deeper reason why I don't instinctively pull toward that. I mean, that's the sort of stuff I read in seminary, so there, I have old notes I could pull out. Some of them are even good. But I do have a kind of philosophical point of view, which is that the sacred is not the private property of organized religion. It is around us. It is in nature. It is in culture. It is in friendship. Martin Buber, between the I and the thou. And it's certainly in our expressions of emotion, like popular songs, which is why I'm often pulling just popular tunes off the hit parade for us to sing. And they're kind of fun, and we mostly know them. We know them as well as we know those hymns, so it's no extra struggle. And then movies, fairy tales, things that we are familiar with and see as either children's stories or light entertainment, and then we take a closer look. Using Joseph Campbell's ideas, which weren't all his, I mean, but he constellated a way to look at story material from a mythic perspective. Not that they are all truly mythological tales with that kind of pedigree and antiquity, but there are mythic dimensions to them. There is guidance in the most popular movie. There are deep archetypal messages coming through if you have the trick. And the trick, Joseph Campbell said, was to read the picture language. He's talking about the metaphors in story and poetry that will allude to something beyond itself. And that is, when I'm up here, what I'm trying to do is look at stories we already know and what did we miss? What else is there?
I'm going to read this unedited as I received it, so don't blame me. If you could have dinner with any spiritual thinker, alive or dead or Al Ronyecz, who would it be and what would you want to talk about?
Many answers. Rumi came to mind. I'd love to sit down and talk to Rumi about the personal angel he was writing all those poems to. Carl Jung. Carl Jung said he was not going to comment on God, whether there's God. But as a psychologist, he thought the image of God in the imagination, in literature, in dreams, that was a powerful presence in human experience, and that he had a lot to say about. I'd like to pick his mind on that. First, I'd like to go to the castle and sit there in Bollingen by Lake Geneva and enjoy the medieval getaway that he built with his own hands and comment on that. But I wanted to ask him more about the image of God and why that distinction was so important in his. But then I had one, sorry, lots of answers here. Jack Kerouac. We don't think of Jack Kerouac as a religious thinker, but he was quite a mystic and a very devout Catholic. And I would want to know more about his spiritual feelings and how his poetry was not just raucous and rebellious, but radiant.
If an alternate universe exists, do you think religion is included in it?
That somebody would think to ask that question is so cool. Alternate parallel universes. Okay, I get into deep, long conversations with people because of being on a TV program about ancient aliens. I get calls, and some of them are really pretty interesting. Some of them are pretty loopy. I think there'd be religion. I think the same impulse that had us create gods in our images, would occur to other beings. That's my best guess.
How do you balance the humanist, spiritual, and mystical UUism when you present Unitarian Universalism for the first time to Live Oak visitors or to new members?
It's really tricky. That's a very hard question and a hard task. I try to get to the word spiritual and then immediately say, but you could take that lightly, you could take that poetically as the search for meaning, whatever is fulfilling, whatever is inspiring. Walking in the Redwoods is the most profound cathedral I can find on the planet Earth. So that's about it, those words. I definitely want to get to the word spiritual because people tend to have a kind of black and white. Either you're a believer or you're not. And I think, first of all, I want to live in the creative tension between those two. And because most organized religions that I have been bruised by were way too heavy on believing. I believe in the Father and the Son, and I can't even remember it, but said it a lot of times. And as if the profound experience is something you hold in your mind. I defer. I think that the profound experience I hold in my bones and my gut and my dreams and the mind comes into it kind of late in the process. So I'm really into what we can experience by practice, what we can know in doing more than know in knowing.
This one does refer to your History Channel. On the History Channel, you were in discussions with believers of supernatural spirits and otherworld aliens. Are these New Age beliefs merely modern society's attempt to explain the unexplainable, much the way the myths of the folk and folklore of the ancients tried to do?
Precisely. Yes. And not only doing the interviews for the TV series, which is still on, I'm still on it because they still use old clips and they rerun things. But then there were these big conferences, Alien Con, and we would go to Dallas and we would have thousands of people there. And it was like a church convention. And then the conversation was really a recitation of certain things said in a very specific way. This was so old time for me. And then I would try to get a little Unitarian angle where there might be a couple different ways to look at it. No, there aren't. There's one way to look at this. And I have shared my Eric von Daniken, the author of The Chariots of the Gods, was on this panel on this side. George Tsoukalos, who needs to go to a barber, is sitting on this side with hair about a foot above his head. I think he's just sort of slightly transcending. And the topic was Atlantis, and we're going around, where is Atlantis? Maybe it's out in the Pacific. It was called Mu, and there was this and finally I interject, there is the possibility that Atlantis is a place in the heart, a place of longing and aspiration. Eric von Daniken, who's 110 to 150 years old, says, no, it is not a place in the heart, it is an actual place. And I tried to get another word in edgewise. There's a possibility it's both. How's that? Anyway, I didn't get anywhere, and I left that work. It was kind of interesting. Ann and I would go down to LA for these production sessions and stuff, but I just couldn't get any traction. I couldn't get a word in edgewise. And of course, they edit the interview, so the stuff they had me saying, I would say, well, there is a legend that there was a continent out in the middle of the Atlantic. I'd say, put a little history in there, and then I'd spin off into the psychological, which they would cut off, drop on the floor. But I never got it said. But I do think that it's as they say, a new religious movement. And the thing about a religion is a scripture. It's true. It's not a metaphor. It's not symbolic. Like that little exchange about Atlantis. It's not an idea in the heart. It's not poetic. It's not figurative. It's not alluding to anything. It's an actual piece of land there in that piece of the ocean. Period. I don't want to hear anything else. And that's too much of a black and white conversation to be any fun.
Interesting. Given your over 40-year history of congregational joys and sorrows, occasional turmoil and ministerial disconnection, what has compelled you to remain a Live Oak member?
Oi. Welcome, O life. I go to encounter for the millionth time the reality of experience and to forge in the smithy of my soul the uncreated conscience of my race. James Joyce, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. This is the smithy of my soul. This is the workshop where I work on my spiritual questions in communion and friendship with others on the path.
Do you believe in ghosts?
That's a good one. I'm not very agnostic on very many things, but my psychotherapy clients tell me about ghosts, and these are lawyers and accountants. These are not wild poets. My pals outside of my practice are all wild poets, but these are people that can afford psychotherapy. So they're showing up and they're holding real positions of responsibility, and they're usually kind of shy about. Well, I don't know how to. I'm not sure what I can say. And they spaz around. I'm thinking this must be important. Did you hurt somebody? What the heck? But my mother showed up and talked to me. You mean showed up? Dream? No. Walked in the kitchen, sat down, and where she always sits. I've heard so many of these reports. I haven't seen in my mama or anybody else. They keep coming to my dreams. My parents are around, and they've been gone a long time. And our relationship's getting a little better, which is good. I haven't apologized for my transgressions. They have not apologized for theirs. But there's something about being dead that you let some stuff go. So I guess my answer is sort of.
You use humor in your programs. Why do you believe there is a place in a religious message for humor? Where do you find your wonderfully lopsided jokes?
So the minister's out walking and he sees a little kid up on a stoop trying to ring the bell, but the kid's very small and he can't reach it. And the minister steps over and says, "Would you like me to ring it for you?" "Yes." And he rings the bell. He says, "And now what do we do, my little friend?" "Run." Internet. I used to have a lot of joke books, but it's so much quicker, and they're terrible. They're just endless, awful jokes, stupid puns. Don't ever choose puns. Avoid if you need to tell jokes and you're looking for it, just skip all the puns. So last night I punt minister jokes, and 150 minister jokes came up, and I read all of them and picked two. So the way to get good jokes is patience. And I go, "Oh, that's bad. Oh, that's bad. Oh, that one's funny. Oh, that's bad. Oh, humor. Freud wrote a paper on somebody was insulting him in very difficult early days. He was presenting his ideas, and one of the criticisms was, your theories sound like jokes, really bad jokes. And his feelings were hurt, and he walked away, and he came home, and then, being Freud, he sat down there. Now that was interesting. Why he said that? And then he thought, well, they are like jokes in a very technical, serious way. A joke has an element of surprise. A joke alludes to something you didn't see coming if it's any good. And my theories allude to things that we would have missed or you didn't think were there. And so he wrote this very serious paper, which is to say, I don't think like that, but when I stop and step back, jokes allude to things. They tell things, sometimes sad things that you don't quite want to say out loud, or things we didn't notice. And the structure of a joke is trying to surprise us. And this is really, if you will, the worship of surprise, that having life all buttoned down isn't going to give us the revelations that are part of the treasure of being human. Jokes probably aren't either, but they're good practice for being open to something we didn't expect.
What has been your greatest challenge as Live Oak minister, and how were you successful in coping with it?
There's too much, too muchness. There's too much to do, and so I've got to have a strong sense of priorities, and that involves hurt feelings. That is, if I don't, it's one thing if a friend doesn't call you back, but I'm sort of in this role. I'm still your friend, but then I'm also the minister in sort of quotes, and I realize that I need to respond to a text, and with friends, I'll miss them once in a while, but then I really feel bad if you have texted me and I don't get to it right away, that kind of thing. So priorities and trying to, and just to confess the obvious, in my many decades of therapy, that is being the patient in therapy, it's been all about being a pleaser, and being ridiculously fragile about whether I said the right thing. And I want to say the right thing, and I want everybody to feel good after they have talked to me, and I don't always succeed. And I say it that way to acknowledge in the saying that it's a ridiculous standard. You can't do that, and it's good mental health to not try too much.
Looking forward 5 years, how do you envision Live Oak?
Well, we'll be here, and we'll be a little bigger, and we'll be a lot like we are with our quirks and our good things, and there will be some new good things. I don't see, and actually, it sounds like a mundane answer, but I think it's of some importance. No big change, no big change, no big loss, no big gain, slow growth, which I think is cyclical, and nobody gets the credit. We just do church well. People will visit, people will like us in our quirky way. We'll be the right fit for more people, and that's a good thing, and we have a good thing going here. Let me say what I'm not saying. What I'm not saying is some radical big change. I actually think that's problematic, and one of the challenges is seeing this more or less like this as pretty good. And we're small, and that's got its beauty. That's a great thing. What I think is important is to keep our anxiety down. What does the Brits say? Keep calm and carry on. Yeah, that's the path I like.
What do you see as Live Oak congregational and spiritual assets? What do you see as Live Oak's liabilities?
We are friendly. The first thing that came to mind when I read that was, we're such a smart group. The level of intelligence from education and life experience, and I don't know what, and I think birds of a feather flock together. I think because we've always been a circle of really smart people and a lot of university professors and things, not smart by accident, but that is awesome. That is just terrific. And I think when somebody that likes really intelligent conversation stumbles in here, they're going to like, oh, this is the place. This is where I want to hang out. I want to be in that conversation. And I'm repeating myself, but the struggle in any group endeavor is hurt feelings. We can't do everybody's good idea. Because we're really smart, we have lots of really good ideas and only so much time in life. So somebody's idea doesn't get attention, and then you have to kind of say, well, that was a pretty good, and it was a good idea. The second best idea is still like a really good idea, but there isn't time to do both.
We have time for maybe a couple more. What surprised you most about becoming a parish minister at Live Oak? What advice would you give an aspiring new minister?
I guess it's confessing two insecurities, the two thoughts that come to mind on that. One is, I don't entertain. I haven't had anybody over for dinner in 50 years. I just don't do that. I've never done that. And I thought that was a requirement of the job. And when I was in the wilderness, that is between seminary 100 years ago and now doing this job, I always thought, well, that won't work. Well, we have these things where we go out to lunch after, and I go, and the two different groups, so I sort of take turns, and so I see in small gatherings, and then the men gather at Madame Lou's. I took my troubles down to Madame Lou, which I sing about every other time that I walk into that summit. And so actually there are plenty of opportunities to be social without having to do that, and I don't know if you noticed that I didn't invite you to lunch, but anyway, that's just not a skill set of mine. I like to hang out with you. It's just something I have never done. The other thing was, because my friends in college and seminary were all going into the ministry, and we talked about the problem and say, well, you know, it's real hell if you get into a congregation that's in terrible financial crisis. And, you know, and you have to, you know, you better be a whiz at that. I'm not a whiz at that. I can balance my bank account, but I mean, I'm not a whiz. But we've got a couple in the room here that are, thank goodness. And due to a lot of, I'm looking at you, Lars, we got and you, Ron, I've seen quite a few really, really smart financial people in the room. Thank goodness, and the ship is steady. And not only that, since I've been here, people have really stepped up, and things are even better than they were a couple of years ago. And that is such a gift to me to not be worrying in the night about that.
Our last question. Given your experience as interim Live Oak minister, should hiring a full-time minister be necessary for Live Oak to continue to thrive? What are your thoughts on a lay-led congregation?
When we started, and I was here on day one, we were a lay-led congregation, and there were quite a few people in the original circle that were there because they specifically wanted that. I don't think they liked the idea of a minister. I don't think the idea of, anyway, it didn't appeal to them. And when we called bets, first as an organizing minister and then as a settled minister, some people left. They wanted to be in, but it was so much work. It really frying people to do everything. And at this size, we should already have a full-time minister, ideally, because there's a lot to do, and a lot of it's hidden, you don't see. So as we grow, we should consider doing that again, although because of challenges like the cost of housing here, and if we find somebody who lives nearby, they may only be available half-time, so for reasons of the market, we might be kind of stuck with this model. It can work. But if we're larger, more staff time of some kind is needed. That is, somebody in addition to our long-suffering administrator who does an astounding amount and works more hours than she's paid and is extremely efficient. Thank God this is holding us together. But yeah, I think there are just some things that volunteers are not going to do or are very reluctant to do. So it gets like pulling teeth. Ideally, if you really have it humming, everybody does something they kind of like doing. And if you like doing it, then you know, Judy shows up. She seems to like putting this room into order. She shows up every morning, and I helped move the chairs around last night, so everything was out of order. The hymnals were not where they belonged, and everything. And by the time we got here, and I don't know if she likes doing it or not, she sure does it on an extremely reliable basis. And that is the best. Now, it can't be that perfect. We can't always be in our bliss. But the closer to that you can be as possible. And that means you need some staff people. And we have Danny now. You know about Danny's arrival? Because he seems to like doing it, and he's making this place more shipshape. Yay!
Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing this time with us. Remember, there is after coffee, our discussion of the sermon. And please leave us with any parting thoughts or uplifting words.
I thought about this one. Here's the 1 minute sermon. You don't have to be a believer to have a spiritual path. An atheist can have an inner life and can be open to mystery and the great secrets and the meaning of life and the journey, and that is, I think, important around here. There's a spectrum. And what I have noticed, being a Unitarian for a very long time, is that people move around on the spectrum and kind of redefine themselves. One thing marvelous about this gang is you can stay in the same community and keep changing. Although I have visited Vedanta, and I see a lot of people that I used to hang out with in Unitarian circles that they wanted something with more specific spiritual teachings, and for some reason that seems to be one of the places they migrate toward. But it was Kurt. I'll see Kurt. But it was Kurt that said, when I started, he said, could you do something on spiritual life for atheists? And I said, oh yeah, you're on. That is the big conversation in my way of seeing things. Thank you for the grilling. Thank you, Al.